In the history of how nations die, the sound is usually loud. Cannon fire, marching boots, screaming shells. But in the 19th century, the greatest empire of the Middle East did not fall to soldiers. It fell to accountants. It was not conquered by gunpowder, but by compound interest. This is the story of the first true debt trap in modern history. It is the story of how the Ottoman Empire, a superpower that terrified Europe for centuries, was slowly suffocated by the banks of London and Paris. It is a warning that still matters today, because you do not need to invade a country to own it. You simply need to hold its mortgage. To understand how this happened, we must look at the Ottoman Empire in the middle of the 19th century. From the outside, it still appeared enormous. It stretched from the Balkans across Anatolia, down to Mecca and Medina, and across North Africa. The Sultan ruled millions and sat at the crossroads of the world. But beneath this image of imperial power, the foundation was rock. While Britain and France were transforming their economies through the Industrial Revolution, building factories, railways, and steam engines, the Ottoman economy remained trapped in an agrarian past. It was a land of peasants and craftsmen trying to compete in a world of machines. The imperial treasury was chronically empty. The tax system was inefficient and corrupt, with local officials stealing much of the revenue before it ever reached Istanbul. For centuries, the Ottomans survived financial crises by debasing their currency or confiscating wealth from elites. In the modern financial world, these methods no longer worked. The empire needed capital to survive. It needed a modern army to defend itself from Russia, and it needed infrastructure to function as a modern state. For generations, Ottoman rulers resisted borrowing from Europe. There was religious discomfort with interest and political fear of dependence on Christian powers. But in 1853, that resistance collapsed. Russia invaded Ottoman territory, triggering the Crimean War. The empire could not afford to fight alone. Britain and France stepped in as allies, sending armies and fleets, but they also sent bankers. The war drained millions the Ottoman treasury did not have. Soldiers needed to be paid, weapons manufactured, and ships supplied. Sultan Abdulmasud faced a grim reality. In 1854, the Ottoman Empire signed its first foreign loan with British and French banks. The loan was presented as support, but its terms were predatory. It was issued at 80%. For every 100 pounds of debt, the empire received only 80, yet it paid interest on the full amount. This became the original sign of Ottoman finance: high interest, low cash, and permanent dependence. When the gold arrived in Istanbul, it felt like salvation. The army was paid and the immediate crisis passed. The Sultan learned a dangerous lesson. With a signature in London, he could summon gold. When the war ended in 1856, the borrowing did not. The Ottoman elite wanted their empire to look European. They wanted prestige and recognition, not industrial transformation. Instead of investing in factories, education, or productivity, they spent borrowed money on symbols of power. The greatest of these was Dolmabahce Palace. The Sultan abandoned the old Topkapi Palace and ordered a European-style palace on the Bosphorus. It was filled with gold leaf, crystal staircases, silk carpets, and Italian marble. The palace was magnificent, but it was built entirely with debt. Its cost equaled nearly a quarter of the empire's annual tax revenue. Topa porite. The Sultan returned repeatedly to European banks. By the 1860s, the empire was trapped in a cycle it could not escape. It borrowed new money to pay interest on old loans. This was a Ponzi scheme operating at the scale of a state. By 1870, more than half of all government revenue went to debt payments. Half of the taxes collected from farmers, fishermen, and merchants left the country immediately. There was no money for schools, infrastructure, or defense. When the treasury ran dry between foreign loans, the government turned to local money lenders known as the Galata bankers. These short-term loans carried interest rates as high as 20%, pushing the empire deeper into financial collapse. Sultan Abdulaziz worsened the situation by pursuing prestige through military spending. He built a massive navy, ordering modern warships from European shipyards. On paper, the Ottoman navy became one of the largest in the world. In reality, the ships sat idle and rusting because the empire could not afford fuel or maintenance. They were floating monuments to debt. The system collapsed in the 1870s. In 1873, a financial panic spread across Europe. drying up global credit. At the same time, catastrophic drought struck Anatolia. Crops failed, famine spread, and the tax base of the empire collapsed. Revenue disappeared, but debt payments remained fixed. In October 1875, the Ottoman government admitted the truth. It could not pay. The decree of Ramadan announced a suspension of debt payments, offering partial payment in cash and the rest in government paper. In financial terms, it was a default. The reaction in Europe was furious. Millions of investors in Britain and France lost money. Diplomatic support evaporated. Russia saw opportunity and attacked. In 1877, the Ottoman Empire was defeated in war, losing vast territories and being forced to pay massive reparations to Russia. The empire was now insolvent beyond recovery. European powers did not want to conquer Ottoman land. They wanted something more efficient: control of its revenue. In 1881, they imposed the Decree of Muharrem, creating the Ottoman Public Debt Administration. This institution was run by foreign creditors and operated independently of the Ottoman government. It took direct control of major tax revenues, including salt, tobacco, silk, fishing, and stamp duties. European agents collected Ottoman taxes and sent the money abroad. By 1914, 1/3 of all state revenue went directly to foreign creditors. The Sultan still ruled in name, but real power had shifted. The empire could not invest in development because its surplus was extracted. Sovereignty was lost without a single foreign soldier marching into Istanbul. Germany later entered the picture, offering railways, weapons, and partnership. But German loans carried their own chains. The Berlin-Baghdad Railway tied the empire to German economic and strategic interests. By 1914, the Ottomans were financially cornered. When World War I began, the empire gambled everything by joining Germany, hoping victory would erase its debts and restore independence. The gamble failed. The empire collapsed, but the debt survived. When the Turkish Republic was founded in 1923, European creditors demanded repayment. Turkey inherited the debt of the dead empire. It took until 1954, 100 years after the first loan, to pay it off. This is the lesson of the Ottoman debt trap. Debt is power. Loans are never neutral. You do not need armies to conquer a nation. You only need interest. The Ottoman Empire was not defeated on the battlefield. It was foreclosed. Sovereignty is not just about flags and borders. Sovereignty is about solvency. If you do not own your debt owns you.